when we're in that sort of downward spiral of the mind telling us all these horrible things, right? Then all these different things like self-judgment come up, like the inner critic can get more distorted, right? Like you suck, no one likes you, all that sort of mind chatter goes on, right? That then ramps up low self-worth, which then ramps up, like this, all this sort of, these distortion patterns can create what I call like this, almost like this dynamic. And when you have 3 or more of these distortion patterns that work in a dynamic like this, it can be really hard to break. So for example, right? You have feeling of like disconnection generally, right? So you don't feel connected to anything because you're in your small S self, right? So you feel like, yes, I am separate, right? I'm not connected to anything larger than me. I'm just in my little, right? I'm not worthy of being loved. So this is now low self-worth. Then if you add the self-judgment piece, now you have 3 distortion patterns creating a spiral. And when you have that spiral going, it can be really, really tough to break out of. And for me, when I work on people, I actually have to break the dynamic. Because, why? Because, for example, say someone like manages to get themselves out of that little spiral somehow, okay? But as soon as they have one of those things triggered, like low self-worth, then all of a sudden right behind it comes the self-judgment, that feeling of disconnection. You see what I mean? So they're like kind of wired together. So you have to, at least from what I've noticed, is it's most helpful for people if you break the dynamic, because it's like a negative vortex almost, So if you can break the dynamic between the 3, then as soon as you have one, you have like enough time, especially if you're doing frequency work, to realize, wait a minute, I'm feeling kind of crappy about myself. And I've released enough of my distortion that, okay, wait, I'm not going to go into self-criticism. Do you see what I'm saying? You're like, you have the awareness to like slow it down. Be like, okay, wait. I'm not going to go into that of like negative, whatever happens. You see? So if you can break that dynamic, it gives you enough time as the person experiencing it, because you're removed more from your distortion pattern. You're removed more from your mind. You have like a couple seconds to get in there to release the distortion pattern even more. You see, like you can see it coming. You're like, nope, confirming removal of this one, right?
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you just said confirming the removal, because that I just want to emphasize as somebody, who's not you, who's doing doing their best here. Like just in the past few days, even like I might start to go back into an old thing. Low self-worth, whatever the thing is, lies, right? And you have to stop it in its tracks. Like you have to. That's the only way to change. So confirming the removal for people who forget, there's a GFC to help, and there's also just the practice of these things come up that trigger certain distortions. You have to stop in the tracks that pattern. And almost like talk to yourself. Like a crazy person. Like, no, Tia, that's not true. We're not going there.
And it's not actually, you're not crazy. What you're doing is you're giving voice to your big S self, your observer. That's what you're doing. I know it sounds like you're being crazy.
That sounds better.
You're not, though, right? Because what happens is in your mind, you believe the mental chatter of the whatever BS you're telling yourself, right? Because that's what it is, really, truly. Honestly, we all have it. And then what you're doing by saying, no, that's not true. Do you see what I'm saying? Because we often only hear the voice of the small S self, like the negative critic, but we don't voice the observer.